Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Non-Toxic Environment Show. This is your host, Andy Pace. As you may know, a couple of years back, I was asked to join the board of directors of a newish nonprofit called Change the Air Foundation. Change the Air Foundation, in its little amount of time in existence, has done a lot of work, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be a part of it. Change the Air Foundation has put together just amazing resources, mini classes on testing your home for mold remediation, how to find an indoor environmental professional. They do weekly podcasts and videos. Again, these mini classes, these series they do, just outstanding resources, and really all about the education and awareness of water damage in buildings causing mold and bacterial problems. Matter of fact, one of the founders and director of public policy, Brandon Chapo, is working with over 18 states now, trying to enact bills to raise awareness about mold, water damage, and poor indoor air quality through their state's departments of health, talking about certification and licensure requirements for mold inspectors and remediators in states that do not have them currently, and helping to increase funding in appropriations for research. He actually has one state bill that has passed already in the state of Illinois, and he's got, 8 more proposed. He even has a federal bill he's been working on. So again, in a little amount of time, Change the Air has done an enormous amount of work. This is a space that clearly requires this type of organization, and Change the Air Foundation is up for the challenge. So when they asked me to become part of the board, knowing that I'm not a mold expert, I'm not an indoor environmental professional per se. I don't do mold inspections. I don't do mold remediation. But I've been working in the built environment for over 30 years, helping people who have allergies, asthma, chemical sensitivities, mold sensitivities, build and remodel their homes, and helping them choose the right materials and systems that will avoid chemical off-gassing and avoid the production of mold at the start. And so they asked me to become part of the organization, I think, to bring a different direction or maybe a different viewpoint, and I'm happy to do that. And that viewpoint is working with the materials themselves. So one of my first goals as the board was to create what I called a building advisory committee to start to put together the framework on recommending materials and methods to build homes that will help those who have immune system disorders such as chronic inflammatory response, mast cell activation, dysautonomia, Lyme's disease, and so forth. And so we are putting together that framework, the recommendations on how to build homes that are healthier for folks who have these health issues, or for anybody who's trying to avoid it. Every week for the last 6 months, I've been getting together with a couple of colleagues around the country via Zoom to just discuss the issues, to sort of start the process of figuring out, what are our first and next steps. And I'm working with a builder in Boulder, Colorado named Brian Tinker. I'm working with a building biologist and home inspector out of the Minnesota Twin Cities, Amanda Klecker. And the three of us, like I said, get together about once a week to discuss these issues. And I thought it would be fun for everybody to just listen in on a weekly meeting, to listen to the topics we're discussing. Now, I did let them know we're being recorded this week, and I did let them know that I wanted them to introduce themselves to an audience that hasn't heard them before. So they will introduce themselves, but pretty much the rest of the conversation is what we talk about every week. And I think you'll find it fascinating. I also encourage you to like this video or this podcast, follow us, and then comment on what you hear, what you're not hearing, what you'd like to hear, and give us some guidance. You're the ones living in these homes, and you're the ones having to deal with these issues personally and directly. And so we want your feedback to help us as we guide the industry on how to build healthier homes. So please have a listen. Thank you. Good afternoon, team. How is everybody today?
Doing great. Thank you.
Well,
Excellent. So, for those of you who have never seen this before, this is an ad hoc committee we put together for the Change the Air Foundation, and it's called the Building Advisory Committee. And Brian and Amanda and I meet usually once a week, maybe every couple of weeks, to talk about the framework for putting together materials and recommendations on how to build homes, how to remodel homes, maintain homes, specifically for people with sensitivities to mold and chemicals. And so those who suffer from real severe health issues like chronic inflammatory response syndrome, mast cell activation, Lyme disease, dysautonomia, or just generally have health issues with molds and chemicals. And so Brian and I actually started talking. It's been many months now, Brian, that you and I got together.
Yep.
And then Amanda joined the group more recently, and we really have a great sort of synergy of us three putting these together. And so everybody knows me because this is the Non-Toxic Environments podcast, but let's introduce the other team members. Brian, tell us about yourself.
Sure. My name is Brian Tinker, and I am a custom home builder in Colorado. And I have built custom homes for 20 years, but I really did not understand the world of mold and how to build according to mold for many, many years. And then um, through my wife and son story of basically finding out they have SIRS and all of the ramifications of that. And we lived in a 1931 home that had many, many instances of water damage, just basically because there's no waterproofing on the foundation and windows and all sorts of stuff like that. So I've gone through a crash course on understanding building from a chemical sensitivity and mold kind of ideology or mentality or viewpoint. And I still didn't know a lot about chemicals. And Andy's constantly teaching me about that and what that means and how to build with different type of resources and understand the costs associated and all the different pieces and parts you want to put together. So working in the building advisory committee I don't know, group, I would say. It's been really helpful because we have a lot of things we learn from each other, but we also have a lot of synergies that we understand how things work in this building world and material world, and also codes and municipalities and how all that comes together. So it's been an unbelievable start to the journey, and it's been incredibly informative, and I am changing everything in terms of how I have learned to build wall assemblies, foundations, roof assemblies, things like that. And it's been incredibly helpful in my own business, but more importantly to me, how we can hopefully impact the building industry as it relates to SIRS and all these other things, and basically how the air quality of the homes that we live in is changed. So, and we also do a lot of large scale remodels. So that's another part of that. That's a very different world than how did you build a building from scratch. So that's me.
Thank you, Brian. Amanda.
yeah. Thanks, Andy. I'm Amanda. I'm the owner of Healthy House on the Block Inspections, and I do home inspections for new buyers, and I do healthy home consultations for families in Minnesota. I kind of got into this in a way that, I didn't expect to go into this field. I really wanted to do research and learn more about the legal field, and I really wanted to kind of dive into that. But in my 20s, our house in kind of a rural area of Minnesota our well was contaminated. And through this contamination, my whole thought process on environmental toxins and how they're impacting our wellness changed and shifted. And I got really interested in initially water quality. learning about, the different toxins that can be and contaminants can be in your drinking water, whether it's well water or city water. And that slowly kind of morphed into this desire to find out more about homes and our home environment and how our home environment is actually impacting our health and wellness. I've always had a love of health and wellness and how to be healthy in a more holistic way. And so it was kind of melding all of these things together and realizing that our homes are impacting our health because we're spending so much time there. And for me, it was kind of a calling to be able to help other families understand what they can do in their homes, especially when they're looking to move into a home. I thought that's the best place to kind of catch these people, right? Is when they're going to be moving in. Can we, prevent things that after you move in, or is this a no-go altogether? Because I was seeing things like mold, seeing things like water damage in these homes, and a lot of realtors or even people kind of that are seasoned homeowners kind of just saying, no big deal. It's really not a big deal. We see this in all the houses. And so it was really trying to educate them on, what this could mean for their home environment and how we could deal with it, or do we walk away? And then in that kind of my business expanded into helping people understand the current home they're in. So if we can walk through and we can make changes, and sometimes it's as easy as habit changes, but sometimes it is something bigger where we need to physically change a part of their house. And how do we do that in a healthy way? And how do we create a space that is more of a sanctuary to really give your body the space it needs to heal, where it's not becoming burdened down with all of the toxins that we now let into our homes, and keep in our homes because they're so airtight and so energy efficient. And so I think, helping families understand what's going on with their home is really the first step. And making sure that they can be their own best advocates in a process, whether it's building a new home or remodeling or even just a small home project. They need to be the ones to kind of take direction and steer where they want to go. And that's what I have loved about this is kind of it's the idea of helping the homeowner speak up and be educated and know how they can do things differently.
Awesome. A couple things here. This is exactly why this group is working because we have in this group we have a home builder, a remodeler, somebody who actually is creating these homes. We have the home inspector, somebody, and then also a person who is um, helping people live in their current home in a healthier manner. And then myself, more of a materials expert, more of a, I mean, I can support both sides. And so neither one of us really step on toes. None of us step on toes. We don't overlap too much, but we overlap enough where we can all work together. And I think this is what the industry is really needing is people working together for the same common goal instead of trying to, do things on their own in the hopes of trying to keep this from being just an interview show, and it's just more of a let's just talk. I guess one of the things I wanted to talk about is a couple of current clients, and I have you both kind of chime in on this. I have one current client who rented a home, and when they moved in, they noticed that all the ducts were full of mold, and so one of the things that you brought up, Amanda, and I just had another customer or another podcast guest just a couple weeks ago talk about this, the legal ramifications of building or remodeling or even being like a landlord in homes that have mold issues, bacterial issues, chemical issues. And, from both of your standpoints, have you seen that ever come to play out in a way?
Like in a legal way.
Yeah.
So Minnesota is a very tenant friendly state. And so a lot of times all it takes is someone getting a mold test like an air test in their house and they can break their lease. And so that has been, I mean, that's usually like kind of where I step in and we can go through and do a mold inspection, do a mold test, to get them out of their lease. As far as, holding that landlord accountable for medical or anything like that, I haven't seen that so much. I
Okay.
think more it's just a tool that you can use if you're in an unhealthy space where you legally can get out of your lease. And I know other states are different, but Minnesota tends to be very forgiving to the tenant, or they're kind of supporting the tenant so that the landlord can't hold them accountable or hold them to that lease if it's a toxic space.
Okay.
And I would say I see the same in respect to Colorado, at least in Colorado law. However, I would say I think a lot of landlords are just absolutely clueless about any of these issues. And so they have sometimes one house, sometimes they have 15 houses, and they are just getting them up and going. And then they use management companies half the time. So they don't even walk into their own homes and understand all of the issues. So they're trusting the project management company to make sure that those homes are actually healthy, safe, good egress windows, whatever it is in the house. It's not just mold. There's a lot of questions around fire issues or healthy mold issues. And I know Illinois is friendly in many respects, but I know my son lived in the house in college that was absolutely full of mold, and owners would do nothing about it. They wouldn't do anything. And my son has SIRS, and so he's trying to play soccer. He can't run for more than 5 minutes, and he was truly suffering in that environment. And it was visible mold on the walls and in the basement, especially, and things like that. So I think there's a lot of cluelessness, but even then, there's no teeth for a lot of these things. They're never held accountable from what I see in terms of, hey, you're responsible for this place that has at least known mold. You can just blow it off. So that's hard. That's hard to
I
deal with.
wonder if it's sort of like in the building materials industry, uh, better yet, in all consumer goods, manufacturers are never held accountable for toxic ingredients until there's enough people involved in a class action lawsuit,
Hmm.
right? Otherwise, you're allowed to sell what you want to sell. I mean, you can still buy urea formaldehyde based plywood, for gosh sakes. We all know urea formaldehyde is a carcinogen, but yet you can go down to the hardware store and buy 300 items today that still release urea formaldehyde. For some reason, that's still okay. And so, but it hasn't been taken off the market. Now I see we're slowly changing that, slowly improving that, but you know, it's it's just so frustrating because people will call up and say, "How come I can still walk into a public facility and it still smells like somebody sprayed, you know, Glade air freshener all over the place, and it's a triggering chemical." In the building industry, it's even worse. I mean, because it's just kind of assumed that materials will have smells, that lumber will come to the job site full of mold. I mean, it's just kind of, this is all assumed, and the industry is just like, yeah, just got to deal with it, I guess. No big deal.
Yeah, and I don't know what to do with that. So all my lumber that comes has a certain level of mold on it. It was cut in a very moist environment, and then it was cut and put into a pack, and then it was wrapped and tight, and it
Mhm.
sits for days like that. And not every piece of wood has mold on it, but there's definitely some. And it's really difficult to say to framers, would you please inspect every single piece of material you put into this house to make sure it has no mold on it if you can see it, because so much of it's microscopic. So they don't even know that there's mold on that lumber. I don't know that there's mold on that lumber, and I really care. So those are hard things. And then policies are pushing us towards closed cell foam. I can't even
Mm.
build a house in most places around Colorado without using closed cell foam. I have to use it to meet the energy codes. So those things are really complicated because I feel like a lot of people are crazily sensitive to that. But I either have to put, this much foam, 6 inches of foam on the outside of the house, and then rock wool or whatever on the inside, But it's a complicated issue, and that adds a lot of expense.
That's what I was gonna say. It's a lot of time and money that
Mhm.
most builders probably aren't willing to um invest, or you know what I mean? Like they are not gonna take on that expense. They want to keep expenses as low as possible. And so I
Mhm.
think that's really what it boils down to is um, it's a business, so they're in it to make money.
As they should be. Right, and so to that point, Amanda, then it gets pushed to the homeowner, right?
Mm.
As it would, you increase costs, those increased costs go to the homeowner. The disconnect is, um, the industry as a whole needs to take the time to learn these different ways and processes in non-billable time. And oh, you're gonna ask somebody who's already working 60, 70, 80 hours a week now to take non-billable time and away from his family or family, away from their, activities, to say, now I want you to learn about a new way to insulate a home that avoids the use of spray foam. They're like, nope, not going to do it. I got enough clients that don't care.
Mhm.
That's what I'm
Or don't
finding,
know.
or don't know. I'm finding right now. I mean, I'm working with a new client in California, and it's like I just can't find anybody who wants to even think about other ways of doing things because they've been doing it this long. It works. Why fix it if it's not broke? They don't understand the correlation between the chemical toxicities and the possible mold issues of what they're doing and human health.
Yeah.
So as somebody who I feel like Sisyphus every single day. I'm pushing this rock up a hill, and I think I'm getting it to the point where it's going to start rolling down, and here we go. It rolls back on me. I got to start it again every single day. I'm starting this rock over again,
Right.
and but this has been a breath of fresh air to have you two and having these conversations because we all know it's not just us. There are hundreds of people around the country just like us, maybe
Mhm.
even more, but they're all their own individual pockets. And I'm hoping that maybe once we start broadcasting these meetings once in a while, that more will reach out to us and say, "Hey, I want to be a part of this because here's what I can bring to the table. This is what my clients are demanding." Obviously, anybody who's interested in doing that, certainly, leave a comment in the notes. We will get back to you right away. Um, so yeah,
Mm.
so that the other client I'm working with right now is in a multi-million-dollar home on a lake. She's an anesthesiologist. She's very well educated. She knows exactly what the problem in her house is. And she's like, I just want to get the hell out of this place. But
Mhm.
I need to fix it up enough where I can sell it. So the question, I guess, to you guys is again, legal ramifications. Brian, yeah, you're both. I mean, you've all been in real estate in home working in homes. I mean, what are the choices here? Does she have? I mean, knowing that there is and there's not a visible mold problem, or if there was, it was taken care of, but it's just the fact that she knows there's something wrong in the house. But yet, she's got that gut feeling like I can't sell this to somebody if it's not fully taken care of. I mean, it's such a fine line they're walking there.
Well, I know that almost any house can be remediated. That's never the question to me.
Yeah.
You can remediate it for that time frame, but can you make a house that is prone to water damage keep from getting future water damage in
Uh,
it? And I'm not talking about appliance failures,
mhm.
um, those type of things. I mean, you can fix a roof so it won't fail, and then but general maintenance, that's a whole nother question. But to me, my 1931 house, it's so close to the lot line, I'd have to dig all the way to the neighbor's house to actually fix the one side of the house.
Wow.
I can't do that.
No.
Can't take down the fence, say, can I dig up everything and not put shoring piers in so your house doesn't fall into the hole that I'm about to dig? And then I'll go down, clean my foundation, and waterproof it. I
Right.
simply can't do it. So do I tear the house down? Do I leave the house? Do I remediate it and say it's been remediated and I feel good about selling it? And, that's a discussion my wife and I have all the time. And I see this too in other houses. Like, oh my gosh, this house really should just be flattened. There's really no reason to go through the mold testing process and then remediating it, because these homes are anywhere from 1800s to the 60s, and they're a mess. They're just an absolute mess. So I don't know. It's a very difficult thing. And remodelers, Amanda, back to your point, so many people go in to remodel. You can't see any mold when you tear out that bathroom. And yet there's so much mold in the plywood underneath the shower or next to the tub that now you have let it go through the entire house. And what do you say? You're remodeling a bathroom, one bathroom, for $10,000. And now you've basically ruined a house with mold if they have issues. How do you address that? It's only going to cost you an extra 160 to fix the other problems and then mitigate and then rebuild your house. It's going to be fine. So they're really difficult moral questions in some respects, but also just practical questions. And I still don't know how to address so many of them. So
Right, because it does all boil down to, if you're doing a project, like you say, you have a budget for it. And if you have these, unforeseen problems that now you've uncovered, I think a lot of people just kind of go, what is the cheapest solution for this? Because I didn't know this was like, we don't have, a lot of us aren't, we don't have like this expendable like money sitting to the side where we're like, well, just in case we find something, we have this set aside, and I don't know I don't know at what point people then kind of go through insurance, and I don't know how insurance is in where you guys are, but in Minnesota, it is out of control. They've just like raised all of the rates like multiple times because of all of the claims that people have for water damage and it's like they won't even offer that sometimes on houses to like to cover things like mold or water damage. And if you want it, you have to add another like extra policy or like an umbrella policy that's even more. And so then it's cost, like people just see like the dollar signs going up. And so it is kind of like, yeah, what do you do? I mean, I think I'm guessing a lot of people is try to find the least expensive solution where they feel like it's being taken care of in the right way, so that then they don't have it on their shoulders if they are going to go to sell or move out or anything like that.
But people without issues, though, they go in, let's say, first of all, they've saved $16,000 to redo their master bathroom, right? They've been saving that for a long time, and it's taken them everything they've gotten to get to this point, and they're really excited about it. But most remodelers I know, they tear that out. They're like, yeah, there's mold. What a big shock. They cut that plywood out, throw it away as fast as they possibly can, slap a new piece of OSB in its place, and on they go. But the mold spores from that went everywhere, right? Because they're not remediators. They don't do a negative air pressure broom that's all sealed off to make sure. And you couldn't know until you tore it out. You can't know that there's all that mold there until you've gotten into it. So how do you say, well, we need a remediator to do the demo, and that's going to cost $8,000, and do they know anything about what they're doing? I feel like, and I know that I don't want it to sound fatalistic. I really don't, but it's a very difficult situation about how to sort that out. And I don't know how you could ever price for it, because the fact is, builders, remodelers, they're all competing with other builders and remodelers to get the job. So you're trying to put the best product you can for the least possible price. And then you add all this on, and now it's out of reach for the clients. So that's part of the question, I think, that we're, or not even a question, just part of the reality that we're dealing with every day. So
we've talked about this before, about how mold bacteria from water damage is really like the asbestos and lead issue of our time. And in many regards, I think it's worse. In some regards, I don't think it's as bad, but I mean, everything has pros and cons, but With this situation, the reason why I say it's worse is because of just what you said, Brian. You open up a wall, you open up an area that hasn't ever had exposure, and all of a sudden you've got spores going everywhere. With asbestos, it's kind of similar, right? You start to remove that asbestos back tile, and if you don't do it in containment and you're not using certain types of mastic removers that encapsulate that dust while you're doing it, that could go everywhere as well. But when asbestos travels to another location, it doesn't start to proliferate. It's still that
Mhm.
one strand.
Yeah.
Mold can get into the air, find a happy place somewhere, and say, I'm going to stick here and I'm going to grow here because I like being here. You
Right.
know, asbestos is a 30 to 50-year incubation period in the lungs. Somebody gets exposed to asbestos, takes 30 to 50 years before that could turn tumorous. Mold could be a week or less where somebody has a triggering situation. It could be a day, depending on or an hour, depending on your type of your health issue. So it's different but similar.
Mm.
I think the what the asbestos issue has going for it is there have been protocols put in place. Now you've got to have certified asbestos remediation contractors. Here's the protocol. Here's how you're taking care of it. And it's a known issue. This has been going on for decades. With mold, this is still the Wild West. I mean, we all know mold is everywhere. You walk outside, you get hit with mold. Doesn't mean it's necessarily hurting you. It's the stuff that's found inside your home that only grows on water damaged building materials, essentially. That's the kind that's going to do most of the damage. Um, there's no way to predict where it's going to be, and at least in an existing home. And kind of the idea of putting this group together, one of the big ideas was to develop methods and materials on how to build new homes to avoid this problem in the beginning. And so, yeah, I mean, with a 1931 home or a 1968 home, you're never going to be able to, unless you completely tear it down to raw studs and rebuild it, you'll never be able to give it the protection it needs, to completely eliminate the possibility of that mold damage. So, we can do the best we can. As you say, you can remediate this moment of time. You can test this moment of time and say, okay, it's okay, but 2 years down the road, it might be coming back. So this is where the industry needs to step up and say, all right, we understand this. We realize what we've done. Here's how we move forward. And that's kind of what we've been talking about now the last couple of months is, how do we build these homes now that will avoid the production of mold?
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
a
it feels very complicated in that
yeah,
respect because we do want people to be safe and healthy in their homes. And um, I think especially the homes that were built pre-foundation waterproofing,
yeah,
and then that also assumes that whoever did it well. They did it accurately. And drain tiles, which is basically the pipe that goes around the outside of the house that leads to the sump pump to remove any water, those were put in after the waterproofing, right? So the water can go down next to your foundation and just sit, even if it has waterproofing, and go underneath. So, and come up through your slab because there was no water barriers, foam, none of that stuff was
yeah,
put in. And we have that same issue in our house. Water literally comes up through the slab because people think concrete is non-porous. And I know that that may sound, I don't mean to say something that you guys don't know, but a lot of people don't realize it just is a sponge. It's always a sponge from the
yeah.
first day to the last in its lifetime. It soaks anything that's around it up, and that creates other issues for sure. So there are such good new building techniques, whether they're code or not is a whole nother question. And if it's not code, people won't do it. But for those things that are code or those things that are known to me, we do it extensively. And whether it's in a wall, floor, roof assembly, we change it to make it as healthy as possible. But it costs more. And that's another question if your clients don't have that income. or that disposable money to spend extra to make it safer, or they just don't think they need it. They just, I don't need that. Who cares? That's a big question. That's a big answer I get when I bring things up. Why? Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So
I
yeah.
think that's a huge point, is people don't understand how important it is almost until it's too late. And
Mhm.
they're now they're going to try to heal their body, but they're also living in a space that's not conducive to healing. And so it it there's an education piece where, you wish that you could just kind of show everybody how important it really is. And everybody is different. And so what affects one person is not going to impact somebody else the exact same way. But in the name of, health and wellness for our bodies and supporting our health and wellness, we want to create that environment that is as healthy as possible. And a lot of people, it is just kind of like, what? I don't need that. We've been living in, these types of homes forever and we're fine.
Yeah. Well, and I think back to the asbestos question and mold, I kind of view mold more like lead. So you can go take a class, and you can get a lead certification, and that kind of covers you on one hand, but it has to be sanded, heated, or ingested to have lead poisoning. So it's an interesting, it either has to be in the air or it has to have this quality to it. But I think it's similar that you have to make incremental moves legally, legislation wise. You're not going to get there overnight. So assuming that could take 10, 15, 20 years to get to the point we all would envision it being now, what do we do in the meantime? That's, to me, what the purpose of this group is. How do we discuss, figure out, each individual part, each individual material that you use in your house and process you use to remediate it or remodel it, or fully out just build it from scratch? What do you do to get there, and how do you make it, that education, Amanda, back to your point, is it's such an important part for the owners to understand why they need it, not just that it's available to them. Like, would you like this color tile or that color tile? It's very different. So
Well, and so often people don't do anything until they absolutely have to do something. It's,
mhm.
it's out of sight, out of mind for the majority of people living in homes. If it's until it affects somebody in the house. And now it makes it personal. And I totally understand that. Everybody's got 1,000 things they need to worry about every single day. Am I going to worry about mold or chemical off gassing if nobody in the house has any issues with it or perceived issues with it? So I understand that. I understand that perspective. Um, I also understand that the health care in this country is starting to evolve a bit, where it's not just based upon symptom, it's based upon the origin of the problem. So more people going to alt health practitioners, holistic practitioners, more functional uh, doctors, and it's not always about, all right, well, you have a headache, here's some aspirin. Why do you have a headache? Let's investigate that. Um, what I hear sometimes though is clients coming to me saying, "All right, I'm working with so and so, my practitioner, and she says I need to get out of this moldy environment and move into a healthy space." Okay, easier said than done. Everything is so expensive right now. Houses are ridiculous. Um, how do we do that? How can we help people in that process? And also at the same time, maybe educate the person who gave her that advice to say, you can't just tell somebody to get out of this environment because otherwise they're not going to heal, because you've given them zero hope of ever healing. And half of the time that I'm dealing with a client, I'm working on anxiety and stress issues with them versus actually helping them with the building materials, because everybody tells them, you got to get out of this. You have to get away from that. You can't do that if you can't afford to. And you still have kids in school. You can't just take them out of school and move somewhere. You or your husband have a job. You can't just quit your job and move. So we need to be able to give advice to the person, the patient, and also then give that advice to whoever gave them the idea that they need to move and say, let's work together here. Let's try to find a safe, happy ground within the space they're in that is better, maybe not be perfect, but let's, allow a bit of grace here and say we can do things better, but it doesn't have to be perfect in order to be a healing environment.
Oh, I agree completely. I always talk about how there are things within your control. There are things you can change very easily. So you kind of focus on those things first. What things can we do right away that are usually habits, changing sometimes even how we maintain our house. And then you kind of work up to the bigger things. It does, and then as you're working up to the bigger things, the steps are a lot of planning. What am I going to choose? And that's a large part of it. And while you're doing that, sometimes that's a good time to work on a budget or figure out how am I going to make this happen. But I I also see so many people who want their homes to be like they almost think that it's going to be completely free of all toxins. I'm never going to come in contact. And it's like, well, no. And also understand that there are some toxins that are going to be in your space that are not going to impact you unless you are ingesting this, like because there are different routes of exposure too, where
Mhm.
it's like not all toxins are things we breathe in. Not all toxins are going to impact us if we touch them. And so it's like educating, yes, the buyer, the homeowner, but also I see a lot of practitioners who just come to me, like go, we need to go get a mold test of your house because I'm sure you have mold in it. It's like, I'm sure they do, but what do we do with that?
Wow, yeah. So I see this maybe twofold then, right? Helping the client
Yeah.
and then reaching back. I mean, as a group, maybe we can put together some talking points for the practitioners to
Mm.
say when you're telling your patient that you need to get out of this moldy, toxin laden environment, maybe don't say it that way. Maybe say there's probably things in your environment that need to be improved. And let's see if those improvements in the environment uh, turn out to be an improvement in your health.
Mhm. Well, I've had some let's say healthy discourse that was animated with a couple of different practitioners about like adding an ERV system because there's so many people that are literally incapable of moving, right? Whether it's interest rates or whatever it is. I mean, some people are practically disabled with their chemical sensitivity or their SIRS. I mean, they cannot work, they cannot function, and they have a house that somehow is getting paid for. So I've said, well, if you can afford something, um, maybe you caulk behind your sinks, your tub. Maybe you buy an ERV, which, if you get a lower end one, it's an ERV, energy recovery ventilation system that you can put in to change the air out in your house. And so if you get that ERV, you can probably get it installed for around $2,000 to $3,000, depending on where you live. And at least you're getting that air changed. You're getting fresh air into your home all the time that has its own filter. Uh, do I think that that's going to make them all better or make their house completely healthy? No, but it sure can't hurt. It cannot hurt them to have that. And it may be if they can't move, maybe they can do that. And it's a really tough place. And I even have a friend that's a close friend that's a realtor, has been for 2 decades, and they discovered there was mold damage in their house and that their child has SIRS. And now what are we going to do? And as a realtor who is always disclosing information, she is, what do I do if we move from this house? What do I disclose? What do I not do? What's the law say versus what does my head and heart say? about whoever buys this house. So that's a hard thing to navigate and deal with. It really is. So,
Amanda, you and I write for the Wellness Real Estate magazine.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something that I mean, this is specifically something that realtors could be trained on,
mhm.
helping
Yeah.
their clients. Like, obviously, a wellness realtor, you will be able to help or at least assist in clients finding healthier homes from the start, but then also being able to provide really good recommendations to make it that much better. It's not going to be perfect, but I think that everybody has a threshold. Now, I understand somebody who's in full blown SIRS, that threshold is just tiny, and is a trigger. But I think the average person who does have sensitivities, they kind of know about where that spot is, where once they go over that level, that I'm done for the next 2 weeks. But if they walk that fine line, and so I always tell them, let's strive for tolerance. Let's not strive for perfection. Let's try to get your house down below this level always. It's not going to be perfect, but it's not going to be triggering. I think the wellness real estate industry and those folks who are invested in that might be a good first step here.
Mhm.
I agree. And I think I know I've put together some training materials for them
Okay.
that have been used, and it's like it borders on the line of like, am I teaching a realtor how to be an inspector? Well, not quite, but it is like they're the ones holding the client's hand and walking them through, and to have them be aware of some of these issues and some of these things and how to approach it. And like you said, give them the tools and the resources they need once they're there is crucial.
I think even if realtors asked their clients, because you're always meeting with the mom, the dad, or the mom, one, if even if they're single parents, you could even say, does anybody in your family have sensitivities like asthma or anything that we need to be aware of? And that would be tremendously helpful because then they go into each house that they show them with eyes for mold, with eyes for water damage, with I mean a little bit more training, of course, to do that, but it can't hurt to know that information up front and then be on your client's side. And I've never had a realtor ask me any of those questions ever.
Mm.
And I've gone through that process many times. So, and I understand they want a sale, and I get that because they're also running a business and trying to make money, which we all are. So
Right.
it's sometimes there's this push me, pull me feel through this. But I love the idea of training, just like I love the idea of training builders.
Hmm.
I just have to find some that actually want to be trained, where I think realtors are more open to that.
They got to be coachable, right?
You got to be coachable. But I think realtors are there probably,
Yeah.
whereas builders are a little bit more, I don't care. I'm just, no.
Yeah, that used to bother me for years. When I would do these presentations and I'd have these contractors say, "Yeah, okay, whatever." Well, and now I got the information for whoever wants this stuff. I know where to go, and that really offended me because, like, I put a lot of effort into trying to teach you guys what to do here, and then it dawned on me after I started this business when I was 21 years old. So I mean, um, I was easily offended back then, I guess. And maybe 10 years after that, it just dawned on me like these companies, they make their living. They pay their employees because they know how much work they can get done in a day or in an hour, and they've been able to figure that out over all these years. And then you get some pimple faced punk that walks into their office saying you should change your ways, and I'm that's supposed to convince them? No,
Yeah.
it makes sense. They're gonna push back because no, no, no. I know this. We've been doing this. We're fine. It takes, and this is why I've always said that I don't like having regulations and codes and laws because anytime the government gets involved or any type of these, entity gets involved to force people to make a change, it never gets done correctly. It only gets done in a way that just kind of skirts the issue in order to be still profitable. But I want them to change organically by consumers asking them. And okay, they may not, Brian, if somebody came to you and you weren't somebody who was really well versed in SIRS and building healthy homes, as an average builder, you probably go, okay, whatever. But if you had 10 people in the next year ask you about this,
Yep.
all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, I sense a trend here. I think for years, consumers never asked these questions because they knew before they even asked, they're never going to get a good answer. That's why these contractors say to me when I gave these presentations, listen, nobody asked for this stuff. So you're barking up the wrong tree. I think nobody asked because they're just assuming you don't know. And so we need to start asking more often.
Right. And I think too, when I look at the big picture of building, like let's pull it back to production multifamily, whether it's condos, apartments, townhomes, those type of things, all developed by developers, right? And they are doing what? They are trying to make the most money that they can for the least money spent. So it sets up an issue immediately with quality materials for sure, but also quality building, because the building process to do it well you have to be more thought out. And they're looking for the lowest price framer, the lowest price siders, the lowest price everybody. That's what they're looking for. And I'm not trying to throw that industry under the bus. That's just the reality of what it is. And it's very similar with production homes, even high-end production homes. They're still production. That's the idea, that you are building a home in order to sell it to make whatever profit you are per home, and then overall make a lot of money. And so I do see the world that I live in is being very specialized in that clients go to architects who say, I want to build a custom home. And then they come back and say, hey, would you be willing to bid on this home? And then I get to bid on that home. And so they have much more interest and care in what's being built. Whereas down the road, a production home or a production townhome or apartment that's had literally 30 people live in it over, the last 19 years or however many years, that is a very different world that you're moving into. And I even wrote an article for Change the Air Foundation about brand new production homes that are brand new production multifamily, that they can sit for months in the rain, in the snow, in the weather before they're ever dried in. And all of that plywood has been sitting there for months, soaking wet. And there is no care given to that. But people who have SIRS or chemical sensitivities, they think, hey, this is a brand new structure. I'm going to be healthy in this place. I can get a new apartment here and I'm going to be okay. And it's just hard news to share with people. Maybe not. You just don't know. And did they hang the drywall above the concrete, or did they put it right on the concrete so it soaked the moisture straight up in, and now the backside of every piece of drywall is covered in mold? Those are hard things to think about. You're just looking for a new place to live, and you're young or you're middle-aged or whatever you are, and you're just trying to find the best place to live. But it's usually when the issues crop up that you have to ask these questions. So I try to inform my owners ahead of time, but a lot of them are still, even in their custom homes, nah, I don't care. Yeah. So it's a thing. But educating is everything. It's really, truly everything. So
perfect. And that's what we're trying to do here. And hopefully people are seeing that. I can't believe how fast this time went today. Amanda, any final thoughts and maybe some ideas about for both of you, final thoughts and ideas about what we're going to talk about next time?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's how do you get a lot of this information out into the right hands?
Yeah.
And I think we've talked a lot about how homeowners need to be the advocate. So that's great that we can get them the information, but at the same time, not everybody wants this information or even really knows what to do with it other than just to say, okay, thanks. If I ever need it, I have it. So I think that's kind of, going to be something that we should to think about is who needs this information? Is it practitioners who are helping people through some of the medical side of some of these issues, or is it realtors who are, helping people buy houses? I don't know, I don't know who is best to kind of filter the information to where it needs to go.
What do you think, Brian?
Well, I know like next time, one of the things I've always wanted to know more, Amanda, and you would be on the hot seat for this one, is what is the training required to be a home inspector? What is then like with whatever baseline that is, and I'm sure it's different in each state, but then what is the next level? Like for you, what do you need to learn? How would you educate home inspectors? Not so they just point out things that they could get money back for, but for literally the health of the home that somebody is moving into. What would that look like? Because I can answer that for me, but I don't know at all what that's like for home inspectors or where, because you just hear it was inspected, right? That's all you hear. You don't know anything more than that. And so I would love to know that next time, because I think that's a big part. And how could all of these groups, functional medicine doctors, realtors, home builders, home inspectors, what could we, I mean, I know it's a whole nother course, but what could we do to provide resources for each one of those groups? I mean, that sounds like quite an amazing thing that we could work on, honestly,
Well, I honestly, this is the first meeting that we've had that we've actually recorded and put out to the masses. And I don't know what type of feedback we're going to get. This is, this could be received wonderfully. This could be completely ignored. But the fact of the matter is it's on record now.
Yeah.
And so all the ideas today we talked about educating home inspectors, educating realtors, educating the healthcare practitioners, educating the consumers. They're all at different levels in their own personal journey, and they all come at this for a different set of reasons. But you're all right. I mean, all of them need to be educated about this, and I think that is a really good focus. I mean, our mission is to educate. And I will put our mission statement in the show notes so people can see what our mission is. But it's to educate. And it's because we come from different perspectives of the building industry, and because we're all partial contractors, scientists, we're homeowners, we're people, we're humans, we're affected by this too. And so, I think this is a really good first start. And I look forward to the next time we get a chance to get together and record one of these conversations. And I really look forward to the feedback that we get from listeners. I think that that's going to help guide this as well. So I think that's good. I think we'll plan on talking again. I will be unavailable next week. I will be in the hospital for my 5th and final shoulder surgery, God willing. And we'll talk again probably the following week.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Thank you both. Really appreciate it, and look forward to hearing from you again.
Okay. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.